Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Mind and Muse Crafts podcast. I am your host, Caroline, and as usual, I am coming to you from the western side of the island of Puerto Rico, a small town called Aguada, where I live with my husband. And as of late, I have become a retired math professor. 1 year ago, decided that I was going to take a break from my teaching responsibilities to help my son take care of his newborn son. I don't know, I guess I just got used to it, and here I am still, unemployed, but crafting. And so I come here about every 2 weeks, and I share with you what I have called the crafty side of my life. It is just a short conversation between you and I in which I present to you projects that I have been working on, explain a little bit about how they are being worked up, and try to share my experiences with difficulties, modifications, and simply new things that I have learned. So thank you for joining me today. So, starting out our conversation, let's talk a little bit about what I am wearing at the risk of having people turn on to watch this video and say, hey, this is the same video from a couple of weeks ago. I already saw this because she's wearing the same thing. Let me first state that it is a different episode. It is just that I have completed for the third time this garment, and I wanted to share with you how it looks. But in addition, I also made the earrings that I had shared with you on the last episode, the thread that I had found, and I worked them up because they had this nice yellow that you can see in this blouse. And after I worked them up, I had to say that they're way outside of my comfort zone, that's for sure, with the colors. I did want to have color for earrings. I just thought that the color changes would be shorter, and that way I would end up seeing more colors in the earrings, but no, they were pretty long changes for this project, which is so small. So yeah, they are not exactly what I expected, but they do go well with the garment. Maybe not for this time of year. It's maybe more of a color that I would tend to use more towards the end of spring, beginning of summer. But I did want to share them with you because I did complete them. It goes very well with the garment that I have completed once again, which you remember was the kind of crochet hacking project that I was sharing with you, where I took an old blouse, an old top that I had that wasn't fitting well anymore. I cut off a certain portion of it and found a crochet pattern that I could adapt to the bottom part of the garment. So once again, hopefully for the last time on this podcast, well, at least for the last time as a work in progress or whatever, I will be sharing with you the crochet hack that I guess I should find a name for. The pattern that I use to recreate the bottom is the Turn Tunic by Haley Bailey. And I've shared the details of this 2 times before on the podcast. So if you want to go back to episode maybe 86, and you can see the beginnings, and the last episode 91, you can see the second attempt to which I will confess, the second attempt only occurred because the first attempt I ran out of yarn and could not find thread, and I could not find that thread at my local craft store anymore, so I didn't want to purchase. But I added my stash, first of all, a CoBoo yarn that I had purchased on a trip to Florida and had brought back to me. And then on a third trip to that craft store, I actually saw a new yarn that wasn't in my stash, and it is this yellow yarn that I'm going to show you. Let me show you what I've done. So this is the turn pattern at the bottom. The only thing different I have done is I did a round of single crochet all the way around. Let me get back down here with you in case somebody needs to read my lips in order to understand what I'm saying. Anyway, to the pattern, obviously, I don't know obviously, but I've shared it before with you. The pattern at the top has a crochet upper part, and then the bottom part is this pattern. And I decided to use this blouse because it was perfectly fine. I just found it too tight at the bottom, and I decided to add the turn pattern to the bottom of the blouse. I used two 100-gram skeins, and as a reminder, this has 186 yards in 100 grams of thread, and so I used two. And I wanted to use the two completely, but I was just missing enough thread for about 20 stitches, which is basically one of the shell patterns because there are chains and things in there that count also. So it was just one shell that I was missing, and I couldn't complete one more round. So each pattern repeat actually consists of 6 rows, but I only was going to have enough for 3. I couldn't complete the last 3. So maybe 3 or 4 grams of, maybe a little bit more, I don't know, because this is pretty dense yarn, was left over. Not enough to do a complete round, but so what I did was I went around and I added a single crochet border to the end, kind of like to give it a little bit more weight at that final round and help it to settle down. Now, we had, you and me, because you shared with me, several of you shared with you some of your concerns. I used a 3.25 millimeter crochet hook, and I believe this, you probably would consider this a worsted weight yarn because of the amount of yardage that's present in 100 grams. But that's because the yarn is dense between the polyester and the cotton. It's really not a thick yarn. So I had mentioned that I wanted to increase the number of stitches. I did. The original pattern has 320 stitches around, and I originally began with 156, and then I went up to 256 this time. It has to be multiples of 12. It has to be multiples of 12. So whatever the closest multiple to, I think it was 204. Maybe it was 204 stitches. And I didn't get I don't know how to call that. The drape is okay, but it's not as flowy. There's not as much fabric as I would have liked to be there, because I too thought that it would be too heavy in the long run. So, okay, so not maybe as flowy as I would have liked it, but somewhat flowy. It's not a tight fit. And I like the color combination better. I think the color is more similar to the top one. And maybe one thing I would have also done differently, I'll try and get a photo and a close-up here so you can see what I mean, so I don't have to keep standing up and all that, is that I did my foundation stitches with needle and thread using the first thread that I was going to use for the project, which was like a lighter yellow. And I worked in, of the 2 loops that are formed, I worked in the bottom loop, the loop closest to me. I guess you'd probably call it the front loop. And I kept on doing that. And this last time I realized that I should have worked in the back loop, the top loop of that, so that I could cover it up and you wouldn't see those stitches of yarn. But when I realized that, I had already had a significant amount of the garment, the bottom part completed. So I decided, well, I'll just leave that as a learning experience for the next time I do this type of thing, but I'm not going to rip it back again. So very happy with that. I think it goes well with my earrings, and I think it will make a very pretty summer blouse. So from this project, I'll mention, since I'm here, that at the same time that I purchased the Turn yellow yarn, I also purchased the Turn in silver, as I had shown you. And I've gotten together several yarns because looking at the pattern, I've realized that with these 4 balls that I bought here will be enough for the bottom, but I will need a different yarn or to buy more of that yarn to do the top. So I decided that I have some grays in my stash that I am going to use to make the top part, the upper part of the Turn dress this time, and the bottom part for the dress. If anybody is joining us for the first time today, then patience for all of you that have been here before, but I'm just going to show it one more time. This is the Turn tunic dress. I used the pattern to complete the bottom, but it's actually a dress, as I've showed you several times before. Let's see. So that's what I am going to attempt to make. She suggests that it works as a tunic or as maybe a beach cover-up. Excuse me, I'm trying to get some cables out of the way. Or as a beach cover-up, so I think it'll work. I think it'll have a place in my garment wardrobe. So that's one of the projects that's, I say, in my crafty bubble or on my radar, things that I want to do sometime in the future. This would be destashing 4 balls of yarn. Because although these have already been purchased, I did purchase them specifically for this project. So 4 balls of yarn will go from my stash along with that project. There we go. So let me share with you now those projects that I have continued to press on with and give you an update. Let's see. First of all, I guess we can talk about the sweater that I have been working on. I was working on 2 sweaters on the last episode, and I shared them with you. And I have continued to work on those 2 sweaters, the first of which, because I have it in my hand already, is a crochet sweater. And I began, as I said in the last episode, by simply trying to find a project to work up with some yarn that I had in my stash. Highland Heathers by Stylecraft. And it is being made up in 2 colorways. The blue, which is called Lac, and this kind of like mushroom gray, which is called Grist. And they're called Heather because if you look closely at them, you can see that they have other colors within them. Well, maybe this is not the best light to see that, but I can see it. I can see it fine here, that they're not actually solids, but more tonals. So I began working up a sweater, what I thought was going to be from scratch with no, sort of like freestyle, no pattern. But then I had my doubts about the width of it, and I decided to look through my pattern stash, and there I found a pattern from that I purchased from Sewella's site. It was from Two of a Wand, and it is called the Kelly crew neck sweater. As I said, you can find the pattern on Sewella.com. The actual pattern is by Two of Wands, and I don't know really how well you can see. The lighting here is terrible. It comes from all sides except from where you need it. But it's a basic crew neck sweater. There's nothing complicated about it. It is meant to be a garment that you could make as a first-time garment maker in crochet. And so, the last time I think I might have worked up the back, and since then I've completed the back and I added the ribbing at the bottom. My crew neck is complete, and I have finished the front and joined both sides. It has also been steam blocked because I wanted to make sure the two sides would fit each other. And it is particularly, maybe you can tell, it is made so that the shoulders drop. They have dropped shoulders, is that what they're called? And then you pick up your sleeves. In the pattern, she's using a stitch other than the one I'm using. I'm using half double crochet herringbone stitch with a 4mm hook. I started out with 72 stitches across, and it is quite big. And I also wanted it to be much longer. Hers is a sort of crop. Mine goes below at the hips. So, not sure if that's where I wanted it, but that's where it ended up. And in the pattern, she actually works the sleeves attached to the shoulder, front and back, going back and forth until you finish the sleeve. And then you take one seam all the way down the sleeve and all the way down the side. And I decided that I was going to join them at the sides first, and now I'm going to pick up stitches to make my sleeves. One side I've already picked them up. There are 55 stitches, but I want to pick them up on the other side. So that's why I have yarn coming out this way and yarn coming out this way, because I want to work both sleeves at the same time. So hopefully I'll be able to share that with you the next time as a completed project. The Kelly crew neck includes a construction that I hadn't seen before, which is to work up the back first, then to work both shoulders sort of like straps, and then chain to join them, and then complete the front part of it. So I have to say I do like the look of the short rows. More or less she uses short rows at the shoulders, and I have to confess that I do like the way the short rows look. They create sort of like that triangle here, which gives it a nice fall at the shoulders. And I will say that I did not follow the numbers to her pattern because my numbers were different. I started out with 72 and I was halfway done with the back. When I found this pattern, I didn't want to break back my work, so I continued with my 72. Her numbers, her suggested numbers for the different measurements are different. So when I got to this part here, I kind of fiddled with the instructions and figured out how many stitches I could leave at each side, how far in the middle I needed to be before I connected. Well, there was a little bit of math that I had to redo there. The idea is that I was going for 9 inches from here to here. And I think that for me, I could have gone with an 8. But at one point when I began the project, I had mentioned in the past episode that my husband and I are planning a trip to Finland to see the Aurora Borealis in September. And so I kind of like wanted to make sweaters that could be unisex, that in case my husband ran out of something warm and needed one, I could lend one to him. So this was my idea. So it's okay. I think it's okay that I have made it 9 inches just to keep on the safe side. Just to keep on the safe side. So as I say, pretty nice work. I like the way it's looking so far. It's thin. It's not heavy winter garment because that Stylecraft is DK, and it has been steamed, so it has lost some of the I'd say the stitch pattern has lost some of its depth, so it's thinner now. Hangs more, but it's very nice. And I'm very surprised how it really covers up, and the fact that with so few stitches and such a small crochet hook, I was able to get such a large garment. There are, I believe I have used 350 grams of the blue yarn. And I have made the ribbing up to now with just one ball of this DK. It has 297 yards. So I think this will be enough to make the ribbing for the sleeve, which is the only ribbing that I'm missing from this. So in the long run, I would have used 400 grams of the blue. It's like a bluish purple in real life. It's a really nice color. And 100 grams of this. So 500 grams for a long sweater. Yes. We'll see. In the Kelly crew neck cardigan, there is no fit. There is no shaping for the body. So yeah, it's rather boxy. Okay, so that is my Kelly crew neck, and as I say, I don't know, because now I'm moving on to Sleeve Island, and when you move on to Sleeve Island, things get kind of boring. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to finish it in the upcoming weeks. Although it might be too hot to present it to you by wearing it the next time, but we'll see what happens. So next up is my second sweater, the second sweater that I've been working on since the beginning of the year, let's say. And you already know my motivation for working on so many sweaters. And it is a knit garment. It is my first knit garment. I have made knit shawls. I think that's basically the only thing I have knit. Well, shawls and socks. You all seen that I've made socks and maybe some washcloths. But I haven't made a garment. And I've always thought that knitting creates a much thinner garment, that it might be even better because it's less fabric on your body for this type of climate. But I've never really gone into it because knitting and I just don't get along too well. It's knitting... I get anxious when I knit, having so many stitches, let's say open stitches at the same time, and then especially when you're using very thin yarn. This has been a pleasure to knit up because this is a bulky weight garment. Is it bulky? I'm just trying to see, is it bulky, or do they call this one too? I thought it's super bulky, but Yeah, it's a super bulky. So is that classified as... They don't put a number to it here. A lot of yarns use those CYC numbers. But this one doesn't. It just says super bulky on the front. And the recommended is a 9mm crochet hook or a knitting needle. So that's what I used, 9mm. But since I began this, I have found out some more information on making this type of sweater. So I started out once again making a sweater without a pattern because I was like, it has to be very similar to the crochet construction where you can, here in knitting, it is much easier to create the ribbing at the bottom and then work up a front panel, then knitting at the bottom and work up a back panel. So seam those together at the shoulders and the sides and then add your sleeves, I thought. That was my initial idea. But then some of you had comments like that. You thought that this yarn would be too thick and too bulky and that my sweater would be uncomfortable underneath the arms because of the fact that the fabric was so bulky. But that was the idea of me making it in knitting because I knew that with crochet that might be true. Although I did work up a sample recently of using a 10mm hook and crocheting. I did it flat. I just wanted to see how it would work. And I was crocheting back and forth using slip stitches when I'm on the front in the front stitch and when I turn my work in the back stitch. So alternating these slip stitches in the front loop and in the back loop is supposed to give you a stitch that looks a little bit like what is called garter stitch in knitting, where you have your knitting on one side and you're purling also on that side the next time around. And so I did swatch up a little bit of that to just compare. I wonder if, this was my idea, how it would look in crochet. So if you have the patience for slip stitch, then that was actually an alternative with a nice big hook, keeping your tension nice and loose because of the slip stitches, and marking your front and your back so you know when to work in the back loop and when to work in the front loop. It gives a nice fabric, is what I'm going to say, and has like sparked some ideas for future works for me. But this pattern, I set out without this project. I set out without a pattern, as I said, then went to looking for one, and I found two patterns that use the same yarn, one crochet and one knit. The crochet one was a pattern by Sorella. It's found at Sorella.com, and it's called the Simple Knit Sweater. The Simple Knit Sweater. Now, Sorella has a pattern, and she also has a video on YouTube that basically makes the whole sweater with you step by step. So this is Sorella's pattern. She uses basically the same yarn that I use, except uses it in Fisherman's something or other. And but it is the same yarn. Oh, so that's it. It's just called Fisherman. I thought there was a second word to it, but it's just called Fisherman. So she has a free pattern. Sorella's pattern is free, as I said, and you can find it with lots of photos, but you can also find a video on her channel on YouTube where she goes through the whole garment with you. So look at those underarms to see if you by any chance think that they're a bit bulky because it is a dropped shoulder. That was one. And so I looked through that so I could kind of like decide how I was going to continue with this sweater. The second sweater that I found was a paid for, and I paid for it I really wouldn't have needed it because I already had the Sorella's one, but I paid for it because I liked the pattern. Sorella's garment is simply garter stitch, so that means you're always knitting. Whether you're on the front or the back of each, it's done in panels, and whether you're on the front or on the back, you're always knitting. And so it gives it a different textured look than mine, where I'm knitting on the front and purling on the back. And this one is called, okay, so this one is called the Warwick Men's Sweater. And it is by Camellia Designs on, well, when you print out the pattern, that's what she calls her brand. And so this is what it looks like. Now it also uses the same yarn, which was what called my attention. So it is designed for bulky. Also on the side here, the pattern changes, right? The pattern changes. So it's got a pattern for the front, back, but along the side, there's a different pattern. And I like that. I think basically the idea might be to eliminate some bulk with that pattern. Not sure, but I know that she does extend the under part of the sleeve to try and eliminate some bulk from there also. So if some of you were a little bit worried about that, I do have a way to try and eliminate some of that bulk. Although I'm not making this pattern, I can use her ideas and I can adapt them in my pattern. I am simply just making a seamed garment. The Warwick sweater works in the round up to underneath the arms, and then it works both front and back separately. I worked mine in 2 separate pieces. Well, I am working it. I have since we last met, I have completed the back. And notice that I have made mine exceptionally more longer. I thought maybe with a pair of leggings and some boots, it might not look all that bad. And so this is the back. I'm putting it on my, this is the back. I've worked up the shoulders and the neckline, which was, something new for me. I'm knitting and then binding off and then knitting again. Well, knitting and binding off and then completing one shoulder and then going back to complete the other shoulder. You see, it's nice, and this has been already steamed also. So it's nice, and it's a nice thin fabric. It's not bulky at all. It's not as bulky as you would think it would be. I wish you could actually touch it so you could see that it's by no means as bulky as you think it would be. So I think it's going to make a nice sweater. Unfortunately, probably by the time I finish it, winter will be over, so it will have to be a sweater that waits for next winter. Well, it will be appreciated, I think, on my trip to Finland. But, I want to get it finished before that, because trying it on is going to be a doozy unless I actually, can complete it now. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. I haven't woven in any ends because I've left them extra long so that I can actually seam at the top and on the sides with that yarn. And I've really lost count. I was thinking that maybe I used 2 complete balls here. But I think I used a little bit more because I have begun now on the front, which is again knitting at the bottom and just stockinette stitch all the way up the garment. I have 52 stitches here. When I saw the patterns, they were using anywhere between 30 and 36. And I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be gigantic. But so Aurelia uses a 12 millimeter hook and I'm only using a 9. And so, yeah, I think it's okay. And like I said, it looks all scrunched up while you're working on it. But once this is steamed, it really stretches. It really gets a nice stretch to it. So again, I think it's going to be almost tunic length. Almost tunic length. So that's where I'm up to now. I'm trying to complete 10 rows at least a day because this is not exciting. It's not exciting to knit this, although it's exciting in the sense that it works up. I mean, it doesn't take you forever to work up those 10 rows. I like to say, let's say in an hour, I might be able to do those 10 rows. And so if there are 80 rows, maybe 75 rows before I start my shoulders, then that's like 7 days in a week. I can get it done. I mean, it's not quick, but quick enough for me. Quick enough for me to know that I can get this done before September. So purling on the back and crocheting on the front, 9mm hooks that I have told you before that I dislike very much because they're way too short. I really would like them to be longer, a couple of inches longer, and because I feel like I'm holding on to nothing. And knitting without anxiety, because here, if your stitches fall off, I mean, there's nothing to worry about. Those stitches just stay there. So it doesn't worry me. It's kind of hard to drop a stitch is what I mean, in the middle of your work. And at the end, there's no worry because it's static. The stitch just stays there. And that is making me happy right now because I am not a very experienced knitter. So I'm almost through with this, and this is how much I've done. So maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I used 3 balls. I'd have to check to see how many I have left in my stash because I originally had 10, and then I can get back to you. Maybe I'll have the front done for the next time. Hopefully I'll have the front done. I don't know. Because sometimes I get excited with the crochet because it's so easy for me that I just get very enthusiastic with it and keep on working on that. And then I abandon the knitting because, well, it hasn't been my favorite up to now. But at this point, this is coming along pretty well, I would have to say. Very happy with that. So besides those 2 garments, well, and this one that I also completed, or at least redid the whole thing, the bottom part, the earrings that I made, that's about all I've been working on for the past couple of weeks. But I don't know if I've mentioned here, probably not, but sometimes I tech edit for my daughter, Clarissa, and so I'll look through her patterns and try and make sure that all the math works out, and I'll get enthused with it and then want to actually make it. But now her newest pattern, which is called the monthly sweater, is out. I hope you all have seen it either on Instagram or the videos that she's produced to share the project. She shares the project, and in addition to that, she also has provided a couple of tutorials, I'm not sure right now if it's 2 or 3, in which she makes basically the complete garment with you. Well, she at least starts out each section of the project with you, explains the more difficult points and or more complicated aspects, and then she shows you the completed project. So let me share it with you. Well, I'm sure many of you have already seen this garment if you follow her on Instagram or on her YouTube channel. This is the monthly sweater, and the idea is that it is an oversized sweater that you use during certain times of the month that you want to be cozier than others. And so I'm just trying to get a full view. So what can we say about it? It's oversized. It is color blocked, but the blocks are asymmetric, so they're not the same size. It is seamed, but it's also more than seamed. It's created with this technique called modular crochet. And the idea of modular crochet, I'll remind you if you haven't worked on, for example, her Eat Cake sweater is also done in modular crochet, where you work up a piece of the front, the other side to that piece, the other side to that piece, and the other side. So basically the front is done in 4 panels as well as the back. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the front has 2 panels, the back has 2 panels. You go up the front, around to the back, and complete in one back and forth movement what are called the sides of the garment, and then you complete the sleeves. And all this is done because it is believed that your garment has a better drape if you don't crochet in all one piece. It's just theory behind the reason a lot of people don't like doing garments in pieces, but the reality is that your garment has a better drape to it than if you just work it in the round. So that's a theory. You can like it or not, but that's the theory, and that's the way this is made. And so this is one of the patterns that I want to work on. Because I tech edited it and began trying to use something from my stash to reproduce a piece of it, a part of it that I was having doubts with to make sure it was working, and then just stuck with me that I wanted to make that sweater. And I have no use for a monthly sweater. Number one, because I'm beyond the stage of having a special day during the month or a special week during the month where I need to be cozy. And second of all, because I live on a tropical island where sweaters are not allowed most of the time. So, but anyway, I want to make it. And so I found in my stash 3 colors that I'm going to use. There's the CoBoo in yellow, which I think I will make the front or the side panels of the garment. Then I'm going to have a couple of the panels. I've got a big mess here. I'm going to use a 6mm hook. I'm going to hold 2 strands of this together because she uses a 6mm hook with a heavy worsted. It's a special yarn because she uses a blown yarn, which a blown yarn is a yarn that has a mesh in a different material, and then you blow the second material into that mesh, and that creates a fluffy yarn. It is called heavy worsted, and so I don't have that, and I want to use CoBoo held double. And if CoBoo is not enough, I've got this as a backup because the color is very similar to the CoBoo. And this was a yarn that I used for a test that I did for Addie Day Designs. It was a sweater also. And it had short rows shaping all the way down the sleeves. And I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, this was left over from that test. And then I have this yarn, which was the yarn that I used to make certain parts of my Hocus Pocus spellbook. The latch, particularly the latch that goes around the eye, I used this yarn. But this yarn was from a cake. It was from a cake, again, from Madame Tricote. And that cake, I don't particularly remember the name, but I had once bought that cake in tones of gray and white and black. But I only bought 1 cake. I have no idea why I only bought 1 cake. But that 1 cake was not enough to make the sweater. I needed 3 cakes to make the sweater. So I've broken that cake down into colors, which are a cream colored along with the gray and It's got black. There's a lot of yarn in here. It's got a lighter gray. And then it's also got a black. But I've got tons of yarn here because I'm going to be holding these yarns double. And therefore, those were the colors along with that one that rolled too far away. It's got tones of gray and cream and black. And so I took from my stash other black that I have so that I can meet the gauge of that yarn. So I've got some cotton in black. I've got this feels like butter in black that I can use those two together. And then I've got some basic stitch in black. I've got some fingering weight black that I could hold together with also the feels like butter, because feels like butter is pretty thick. And then I can, if I run out of tones of grays, I've got some more grays here. So I am hoping to be able to make this garment by making as much as I can in the Madame Tricote and filling in with other yarns held together to form the different panels. Because basically we'll have 2 panels at the front, 2 panels at the back, 2 large panels on the side, and then 2 sleeves. But yeah, it sounds like a little, but that uses up a lot of yarn. So I want to make sure that I have enough yarn in those different colorways. And I think I found enough in my stash to be able to do that. As I said, I'm just going to bring out the gray and the black of it using this colored yarn. That way I feel that it can pass from winter to spring and it could still be used, or it might be used in the autumn also. And so I think, you know, it's kind of like not a year-round sweater, because for summer I wouldn't wear it, but yeah, it's got the colors in it so that it's not particular to any season, which is like important. This one has already been doubled, so that's what I'm going to try and do. That's one. The Monthly Sweater by Elizabeth of Crochet Cakes. And I need to fix this. At a later moment, my strand came out. That needs to be fixed. Okay, before my light starts changing too much, let me talk about the last part of my what's on my radar is going to be also a pattern that I purchased at Sorella's some time back, and it is it's a vest. It's sort of like a long cardigan vest. Let's see if it's true. I see so many things that I sometimes get them messed up. But it is called the Hydrangea Cardigan. And if you look at it, you're going to see, oh, let's see if I can get that it is similar to, where can I show you this? There's way too much glare in this room, but get the idea. It is similar to the flower duster that I made from, that was designed by Clarissa of Crochet Cakes. This isn't a design by Clarissa. Do I even know who designs this? I don't, this one doesn't have the designer's name on it. It's an oversized, lacy crochet cardigan for summer months inspired by the delicate beauty of my garden. So it could just be from Sorella herself. It's a pattern by, it says here, Sorella yarn. So I'm looking at something like filet crochet, And then I think it's a crisscross pattern for the top. And I really liked it. It's a paid for pattern, but I really liked it. It's still there. As I said in the last episode, Sorella now has a line of yarns, and one of them is her Sorella Yarn Silk Decay, classified as a light number 3. So what I'm going to do in my stash, I've had in my stash 10 skeins of this Knit Picks yarn. It's Knit Picks fingering cotton acrylic, comfy fingering cotton acrylic, 75% Pima cotton, 25% acrylic, classified as a size 1. And then I am going to use this yarn held double with this lace weight that I've had in my stash also for some time. So this lace weight is by Browning and Wolf, and they are on Etsy, fine knitted goods of all sorts, 80% British merino and 20% silk. I don't think she gives the makeup of her blend in the pattern. She might say it on her site. But I do believe it is merino silk. I can look that up for you and put the details in the description box below. So this is something that I want to work up because I want to use this yarn that I've had in my stash forever. And merino with silk is such a soft yarn. And I'm thinking that holding it along with this cotton acrylic is going to give me a nice blend of yarns to make a nice lacy long cardigan. So I have, what do I have? 875 times 2, 1,750 yards of the lace weight. And this has 218, which is going to be 436 in 50 grams. And I've got 2, 4, 436, that's 872. 872 plus another 218 yards. It's not as much. This has more in it than this has. But I do have more of this if I need it. I simply looked at the pattern, calculated the amount of yarn, and tried to work up. She says I will need, if I am doing the small, 1,290. If I'm doing the extra small, 1,120. And so I think I'll be okay for the small. I think I'll be okay for the small. This is going to be worked up with a 5mm hook. So it's going to be really lacy and open. So, I mean, the idea is for the summer. And so that has me enthusiastic too, because of the fact that this yarn is so soft and so nice. And I have to cake up yet the other one, but this was done with the Swift, which took me a lot less time than it used to take me to wind up those types of yarns, the lace weight yarns. So very happy with what it seems will be my upcoming makes. Now, next month in February, we will be heading towards Florida. We are going to be dog sitting for Clarissabeth. And then my husband will come back, and in March, I will be leaving for Alabama to see my grandson. And so I'm trying to plan and pick my projects with enough time so that I can send them in the mail to wherever I'm going, and I won't have to worry about carrying them with me. I think that's about all that I am going to share with you today. I've been up to tons of stuff, and I've been looking at and looking through and planning several different things that I will just have to share with you the next time because I don't want this to be too long. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with me, and I truly enjoy our conversations here, and you truly made it a conversation the last time. A lot of you were commenting, and I was re-commenting or commenting to your comments, and it was a lot of fun to actually share once again the crafty side of my life with all of you. So thank you so much for being here with me. And I also wanted to remind you that remember that to care is to share. So if you truly care about our conversations here, surely you could find someone to share it with, and just send them, copy the link and send it to them and say, oh, here's a podcast that I watch that I think that you would enjoy, and help spread the word so I can try and get back some of those views that we had in the past, and try and keep this channel going. You know, at some point, I'd like to get back into some crochet alongs. We haven't talked about those in ages. At least we haven't planned one on this site in ages, and at some point I'd like to get back to that. And so, yeah, I'd like to move forward. And necessarily to move forward, well, we'd like to build a community here so that we can get people interested in what we do, people sharing what we do, and people sharing what they do, so that we can learn from each other on this channel. So thank you for joining me once again. I hope you have a safe couple of weeks. I hope you are keeping yourself healthy, keeping yourself happy, and most of all, I hope that you will have plenty of time to craft. So until we meet again, thanks for joining me. Bye for now.